Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the tension strut control arms on your BMW F8X chassis cars, so that's your M2, M3, and M4. And this arm is also called the thrust arm, forward control arm, or upper control arm by others. But anyhow, I'm going to be taking mine out because I'm going to be putting these SPL caster adjustable monoballs in them. And the monoballs are an incredibly popular upgrade for this arm because they improve your steering response and give you a ton of steering feel back, something that's a very common complaint with this chassis. Once the car is up in the air, we're going to take our 17mm and undo all of the lug nut bolts. And when we get to the final lug bolt, the wheel's going to want to fall off, so I just use my foot underneath to kind of support it so that it doesn't. Now we can go ahead and grab the wheel and pull it off. Alright, here we are under the car looking at the tension strut control arm itself, and that is this guy right here, going from the knuckle to the subframe. And well, in order to access all the bolts on this, there's only 2 bolts connecting it. So we can see that this goes over to the knuckle, and then the connection for that is right here, this guy, so we'll have to undo that nut. And then the second thing we'll have to undo is the bolt holding it into the subframe over here. And well, to do that, we have to pivot to the front of the car here, and well, we have to remove this cover down here. Now this is an M2, which has a a monolithic cover going across the entire length of the car, so I'm going to have to remove this entire thing. And some other models may only require you to remove just a front quarter panel over here. So that's a little bit easier, but anyhow, you can see that there are a myriad of these 8mm screws going all across, maybe even some of these plastic expanding rivets. So you're going to be using just some pretty basic tools to get those covers off. And also, if there is like a front quarter panel, front quarter section here, there's typically also some screws on the inside of the wheel well liner here. Once again, this flanged 8mm type up here that you would have to undo. So I'm going to start with my 8mm socket here and start by removing all of these bolts and working my way all the way across the front of the car so I can get this front liner piece off. And then looking over here as well, zooming in here, we have an E10 bolt on each side that I also have to take out. Once all the bolts and screws are removed, then we can just go ahead and reach up, pry it back here, and pull the entire under tray off, right, across the entire thing. One thing that may also help is going in and taking your 8mm and removing this screw inside the wheel well, because what that'll let you do is it'll let you peel back this liner more underneath to give you more clearance. Alright, here we are looking at the tension strut to subframe connection point from the front of the car, and as I zoom in here, you can see we have the bolt right there, and that is going to be an 18mm. Now, I'm going to be honest, the working room in here isn't all that great because you can just kind of see it here, but we've got this coolant hose going to one of the forward radiators, kind of right here. So you will need to be a little bit careful just working around here, but there should still be enough space. Certainly not enough to get an impact in there, but a breaker bar with your 18mm socket should fit no problem. So I've got my breaker bar and 18mm socket on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and loosen this bolt. Okay, next we have to remove the tension strut connection to the knuckle. So once again, that's this bolt then, or this nut right here. And well, the nut is a 21mm, and this threaded rod portion, this is the counter hold, and that's going to be a T40. That said, you may be able to just straight impact it off. If you have a lot of like build up over here over time, you can see this is the amount of rust, and I've had this car very few miles, less than 3,000 at this point, and it really hasn't seen any adverse conditions. So this could be a lot more difficult to get off if you daily drive the vehicle and it sees all sorts of road conditions. But anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and zip this off here. And you can see I didn't need to counter hold it, but if you did, then well, you would either have to use a 21mm pass-through wrench so that you could counter hold this T40, or you could just use an adjustable wrench to get the the nut size. So now that you know, this bolt up here is loose, I'm going to go ahead and just fish it and remove it from the car. And once again, you know, the working space isn't great due to that coolant line, so you have to finagle or bend it around a little bit. And now with the nut removed, the bolt taken out, I can go ahead and take the arm out. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it up or lift it up from the knuckle side and then rock this side down and take it out. All right, so here is the stock tension strut arm, and as you can see, you know, it's just one solid aluminum arm, right? There's nothing too interesting over here on the knuckle ball joint side, but if we look over here on the subframe side, right, we can see that that is just a plain rubber bushing. That said, it does look like it's stiffer than the bushing that comes on the regular 234 series, so the F2X and F3X chassis cars. Those ones have a little bit larger cavity inside with more fluid, it looks like. So I think this is, you know, one of the ways BMW tried to improve the steering feel and response on the F8X compared to the F2X, F3X. One other thing looking at this that is different from this one and the F2X, F3X is the hole for the bolt is perfectly centered. And if I show you an F2X, F3X bushing, you know, in comparison, right, you can see the F2X, F3X one is wider, and you know, the rubber pushes further out, so it's got more fluid and better vibration damping characteristics. But you can also see that that bolt hole is also offset slightly. So what that means is if you go to monoballs, which almost always have the hole in the center unless they're eccentric, on the F8X, you won't be altering your caster like you would be on an F2X, F3X by, you know, shifting this hole to the center of the bushing. So in order to press this bushing out, we need to take a look at the arm closely. Let's see if I can get this thing to focus here. Maybe not, we're gonna have to go a little bit further out. Anyhow, if you look at the gap on the arm, the interface between this bushing and the arm right here, there's a little bit of a taper on this side, and on this side you can see it's like perfectly like flush, like the, you know, top of this material here, the arm goes straight and touches the metal cylinder of the bushing. And so that's how you can tell what side to press the bushing in and out of. This side has, you know, no taper, this side does, which means the bushing was pressed in this way and therefore will need to be pressed out that way. So when I put this in the press and the press is pushing down, I'm going to orient the arm like this with the no taper side up, press the bushing out, then I'm going to flip the arm upside down or flip it over from where I had it so I see this taper side up and press the new monoball or new bushing in from this side. Alright, so I want to take just a small tangent here to talk about this SPL caster adjustable monoball here. And well, you know, I'm not going to show you how I, you know, exactly went through installing that. If you have the press and the capability to do that, you probably don't need someone like me really showing you how to do that. That said, you know, what I did do is I took these pressing cups here, which KMAC very kindly provided me in their caster adjustable monoball set when I bought that for my F31 wagon. So I used these here to go ahead and press out the stock bushings and then go ahead and press in this new monoball. And then you can see it's retained over here with this snap ring, although this is just very much a secondary feature because this had quite a tight press fit into the arm. So even without this snap ring, I'm pretty confident this thing won't budge. Alternatively, if you don't have a set of handy dandy pressing cups that are already the right size for these monoballs, the SPL instructions also say you can use a 1 7/8 inch socket as a pressing tool. And you know, one of the things you never want to do is you never want to just push on this inner part here. Well, on these M bushings it might be okay because this is just solid rubber, but if you have one of these fluid filled ones from like an F2X or F3X where, you know, there's just rubber really just encapsulating the fluid, well, that's what's going to cause this rubber to like tear and then these things just like split apart, make a mess, etc. I had a supposedly well-known shop around me try and push out my bushings that way once, and they completely destroyed the bushing because they used the wrong tool for the job. The way these pressing cups are designed is they push on this outer metal sleeve part. They don't press on the actual, you know, load tension on the rubber itself. And well, if you do it where you're just pushing on this, you know, center part, well, that's how you destroy these. Let's talk about this monoball, how I've placed it, and why you see some funky, duct tape on here. So anyhow, if you're going to be doing an alignment right after, it doesn't matter too much where this bolt hole is positioned. If you're not, well, then you want to have this bolt hole roughly in the same position as the stock one. And so what I did is I measured the distance from the bolt hole to this little dimple here. That's what I used as a reference marker. And that was with the original bushing still in the arm, so that when I did finally put these spacers in, I adjusted it to where it was the same length as before. So this should keep the overall arm length roughly the same. Now, why do you see these pieces of duct tape here? Well, let me go ahead and rotate this a bit. And if you look there, you can kind of also see that I've put a dab of permanent marker, Sharpie here and here, and that's what I kind of used to give myself a witness mark for where this hole needed to be. And well, what I found when I was installing the other arm on the car is that it's really difficult to keep this spacer and this spacer aligned. And if these bolt holes are not aligned, well, then trying to get the bolt in there, while trying to bend back the coolant line, is kind of difficult. So what I did is I took these strips of duct tape and I put them on the race as well as the spacer flats. And I did so on the side of the arm that's going to be easily accessible, so I can take them off after the arm is installed, so that it holds these spacers in the index that I want it to, and it keeps the bolt holes aligned. And that made things much, much, much easier. So if you're going to install this part in your car, do this. It's so much easier with just a monoball without an adjustable bolt hole, or your original bushings, because you just slide the arm in between the subframe and pop the bolt in there. Well, now you have to worry about aligning two more pieces, right, these spacers, as well as indexing this bolt hole. So just a little side tangent on this particular part that does increase the complexity of the reinstallation of what otherwise is very simple. All right, so I am about to go ahead and put this arm back into the car. But before I do that, I just want to mention the orientation that I've placed this bolt hole. And you'll notice that when it's in the car, right, this bolt is towards the top. And the reason why I do that is, if we look over here at the car, so this is going to go right there on the subframe. And I've seen with eccentric designs in the past, and this has actually happened to me with the KMAC one on the F31, if I took this hole and put it on the bottom, what it would actually do is it would move the arm up top, and then it had a chance of hitting this upper part of the subframe on some compression strokes. So in order to maintain clearance, well, we're going to go ahead and put this bolt hole at the top here, so it actually positions the arm a little bit lower in the mount, and we should have sufficient clearance. Also, another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of a penetrating oil, or any oil really, and just lightly put a little bit on the surface of this, and I'll move that to the other side as well to help this piece kind of slide into the subframe. I found on the other side it felt like it bound a little bit, and after lubricating it, it did go in there more easily. So just some tips. If you're using just a stock bushing, you obviously won't really need to do this, and you won't have that problem. Okay, so now I'm going to take the arm, I'm going to put it in, I'm going to maneuver this over the tie rod and kind of behind the knuckle, and then I'm going to get this monoball part, right, kind of in the subframe. And if you look at this here, you can see that I've had to cant the monoball a little bit so that this aligns better with the subframe. And actually, to do that, what I did is I, with it straight, because this monoball is pretty stiff, I got it in between the subframe, and then I actually took a mallet, this guy right here, and tapped the arm in until it was between both parts of the subframe, and then I was able to get enough leverage on the arm to kind of put it into a better, more natural alignment. So anyways, let's go ahead and get this up into the subframe, and you can see now it goes in a lot more easily. And then next what I'll do is I'll grab the bolt and then I'll go inside from the front and go ahead and get that bolt in there. And once again, you'll probably have to maneuver your coolant lines to this frontmost radiator out of the way a bit. All right, once you've got the bolt in here, go ahead and just take your hand and secure this by hand as much as you can. But we're not going to go ahead and torque this yet. So I'm just going to keep tightening this by hand till it gets to the point where I can't do that anymore. And well, the reason we only want to get this secured hand tight right now is if you have a rubber bushing and you tighten it all the way and torque it to spec, then you're doing it with the suspension, unloaded, uncompressed. And well, that's going to make the natural position of the bushing uncompressed. So you really want to put load on the suspension, and we'll do that with the jack when you torque this to your final torque spec. So that said, if you have a monoball like I do here, well, these are free to rotate inside the race, so it doesn't have a natural position. So I can go ahead and put this bolt to full torque right now, but since a lot of folks are going to be doing it with rubber bushing, I'm going to go show you that method instead. Okay, so I've got my jack underneath the front rotor knuckle assembly. You can see that I am jacking this up so that I can get the knuckle kind of where it would be at normal ride height, and then once that's in that position, then I am going to go ahead and fully torque the subframe mount. Okay, now that I've got the wheel carrier jacked up at ride height or close to it, I'm going to go ahead and put the final torque on this bolt. Now, if you are reusing your old bolt, the official torque spec is 100 Newton meters or 75 foot-pounds. But SPL, they recommend going a little bit higher, up to 81 foot-pounds, and I actually think that's a good idea. I have personally seen these bolts, if only tightened to 75 foot-pounds after reuse, come slightly loose again. So I'm going to go ahead and retorque mine to the 81 foot-pounds. And if you were using a new bolt on this, well, then what you would do is you would torque it to 100 Newton meters or 75 foot-pounds and then go an additional 90 degrees. But you should never ever do that 90 degrees if you're reusing a bolt. Okay, now that we have the subframe side of the arm in and the bolt holding it, let's go ahead and take the knuckle side and get that through into the knuckle. And then we'll go ahead and take that 21 millimeter nut and get that fastened to the bottom and screw that all the way in. And if you have to counter hold it, remember it's a T40 counter hold in the post, and then 21 millimeter on the nut. And then this 21 millimeter nut on the bottom will get torqued to 175 Newton meters or 129 foot-pounds. And if you have the SPL monoball like mine and you had to use duct tape to align it, don't forget to take that duct tape off. Now it's time to put the underbody paneling back on. So on my M2 I've got this really big piece that goes across the entire thing. Other models you may have something that just a quarter panel that goes on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this in and get it all lined up. And once that cover's in place, you can go ahead and refasten all of the bajillion 8mm screws, and these just need to be hand tight, snug. And also don't forget your 8mm screws and your wheel well liner if you took those out too. And if you have an M2, don't forget these E10 bolts on the bottom as well. And once again, those just need to be hand tight, snug. Then lastly, we just have to take our wheels and put them back on. Then we can take our 17mm and get these wheel bolts back in there. And then we'll torque these in a star pattern to 130 Newton meters or 104 foot-pounds. Okay, so now that the monoballs are in the car, how does it feel? Well, I like it a lot. There's a lot more feeling coming through the steering wheel here. The turn-in is nice and crisp. There's no more delay or a little bit of lag here due to the rubber having to load up a little bit more, right? It's a lot more immediate. So there's a nice improvement from that as well. Now, I won't say that it's quite as large of a change on these F80 platforms as it is on the regular, you know, F2X and F3X cars. And the reason why that's going to be is, well, because, you know, when we looked at the stock bushing, right, we saw that it was solid rubber, not that hydro-filled stuff that the regular 234 series comes with. So already it's stiffer than those regular cars, so there's not as much to be gained. That said, it's still definitely an improvement. One other thing I like about the SPLs in particular is that caster adjustment. And when you go to a higher caster angle, it adds a little bit more weight to the steering. And so for me, you know, right around that 8-degree mark, I find that that puts the comfort steering in an area that's just right. So, you know, before, comfort steering can be a little bit light, but now, you know, for me personally, I really like it at this level of steering heft. The amount of feedback I get, because, you know, for some reason I find that comfort steering has the best feedback. You know, it seems to be, it's heavier in sport modes, but it's also a lot more numb. So this is really kind of what I like, and I'm very happy that I put these monoballs in here. So if you're thinking about this upgrade, I can definitely recommend it. Thankfully for these platforms, there are many options to choose from. However, if you are looking for that caster adjustment, well, you know, you're kind of only limited to SPL here.